Good evening, everyone. Welcome to OpenSinai.com class. I'm so glad you are joining us this evening for our topic, Applied Judaism Confronting Life's Little Dilemmas, with veteran educator Cheryl Gordon. This is an example of the great ability of the internet to bring educators together from across the country. Cheryl is currently sitting in her home in El Paso, Texas, and I'm here in my home in the Bronx in New York City. And together we are joining for this hour journey together through this most important topic. So at this point, I'm going to hand it over to Cheryl. Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to tell you that a few hours ago I was thinking I better have a pre-dinner snack. So I started rummaging around my refrigerator, and way in the back of the third shelf, I found a not so fresh 1/4 challah. And I decided that it was time to throw it out. Did you know that there's a Jewish way to throw out bread? More on that later. As Rabbi Greenberg mentioned, I'm Cheryl, and I'm very pleased to welcome you to my home and to my classroom today. Thank you so very much for being a part of this class. To my old friends and to my new friends, it's a real honor to be with you and share something less than an hour with you. This conversation is brought to you by Open Sinai, and we couldn't do it without the very hard work of Rabbi Greenberg, and I thank him so very much. The man behind the scenes. This is a commitment and a passion on his part, and it's a wonderful thing to have happen. So our conversation today is being led by somebody who's a dual citizen of El Paso, Texas, and Beechwood, Ohio. And the vehicle that's getting us together is basically my little iPhone. And that's a miracle. But I ask you, please, to understand that for me, it's also something very new. I've always been relatively high tech for a person of my generation, but today I may not be as polished or as tech savvy as I would like you to think I am. So give me a little bit of slack should something happen, because this is a learning curve for me, and I very much appreciate it. In terms of what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking a little bit of how I see Torah as a how-to manual, a guide for living and helping us with life's little dilemmas. Then we're going to be looking at some of those dilemmas, and then we're going to be looking at a source sheet. And the source sheet may not be terribly visible to you. It is on your screen in the left-hand corner, and you can try to magnify it. We'll look at that later, and I'll give you a cue when it's appropriate. But having said that, if that doesn't work for you, or if you should become attached to it, see value in it, and consider it a keeper, Rabbi Greenberg has told me that he has the ability to email it to you if you so desire. So those are the little bit of housekeeping things that I just wanted to share with you. So I used the word Torah, and I said we're going to look at Torah today. And I just am going to tell you that for my purposes, I'm not talking about only the scrolls. I'm talking about all of Jewish wisdom and knowledge from long, long ago up to even contemporary rabbinic decisions. They are a great, great resource for us to help us make decisions. They're time tested, and hopefully they'll become a tool for you, or at least some of the things that you learn today will become tools for you. Now, I also know that many of you know or have been exposed to a good amount of these things before, but review is never bad, and perhaps you've thought of it in a different context than what we're going to present today. So this is all good stuff. One of the things that you may be thinking is maybe you don't need this stuff too much, because at the end of the day, you're an intelligent, informed, good person, and you can make your own decisions about how you're going to act when something uncomfortable arises. Well, in Judaism, it's really about not the right for you to make your own decisions. We don't talk that much about rights. We talk about obligations. In Jewish wisdom, we consider this world to be a messy one, and it's our obligation to make it a little bit less so. So basically, I, for example, would say I have no right to act based solely on just how I'm feeling. The other thing that you might be thinking is this is old stuff. It's all dusty, and it's in libraries, it's in shuls, it's in synagogues, it's You know, this is the world is so very, very different today. This, yes, it's true that these particular hints have helped people for many, many years get out of their dilemmas, ordinary people. But this is relevant, good stuff for today too. It's a precious resource for you to have. They might get a clean piece of bread. Now, that second one seemed for many, many years to me to be really theoretical and really far out until I was surfing, channel surfing, and came across a PBS documentary, this is true, on the homeless. And they were interviewing a guy who said outright, I really prefer to look in dumpsters in Jewish neighborhoods. And his reasoning was that he's more likely to find a clean piece of, I remember specifically he said three things. He said clean bread, clean donuts, and clean cake that he can find in Jewish dumpsters and they're because they're wrapped. And my thought, this wouldn't be in a Jewish neighborhood. Someone in a Jewish neighborhood would throw out donuts or cake, but I guess it really, could happen. So we have some other situations to discuss. So Rabbi Greenberg, would you put up the choices? And then you're probably going to have to help me in terms of uh, selecting, what someone, or if I'm not able to see, telling me what has been chosen. Let me explain. These are the ones that we would like to look at. These are just a few little teaser words. So please put that up, and let's leave it up for a minute. Okay. If the class would please look at these, and if someone would be kind enough to indicate one that they'd choose one, and we can talk about it.
You can submit which one you would like to choose
Right.
in the Q&A section. I noticed, BJ, the glitch is resolved. We're back, as you can tell. If you, BJ, if you or anyone else, if you would like to pick one of these topics, one of these boxes, please feel free to do so. You could do it in the Q&A box, which you can be found by clicking on the Q&A button on your video screen.
Do we have anybody made a choice?
I think all your topics are so great.
Okay,
No one can choose one.
Go ahead, and I'm going to take one. Okay. Rabbi, would you please put up the rock?
Absolutely.
And we're using used car. We're going to just go in order. Okay, so that is a big, big boulder, a big rock. Why is it there? What does it have to do with used cars? Well, briefly, I'd like to suggest a scenario that I'm sure has happened in one iteration or another to many of us. And that is that someone tells you that they've found a great deal on a used car through a connection, through a friend, and this is a fabulous low mile deal and really a honey of a car, and they're getting it at a fabulous price. And when you hear this, it becomes very obvious to you that this is a car you know about. And this is a car that someone bragged about having fixed after some very serious accident. And it was not the low mileage cream puff that was portrayed, but actually a higher mileage car. And there had been some dirty dealings, and the car was basically not what it was presented to be. Now, your friend who's telling you and is all excited about the find he has doesn't know about the background on this car. What's the Jewish response to this? Well, there's a very important lesson learned from the teaching, don't put a stumbling block before the blind. What that means essentially is that you're responsible to make sure that if you have the ability to make a path clear to someone, to present that information to them. Now, everything is complex, and everything is not as easy as it seems. So a better way to do it perhaps would be to, we're going to continue. And essentially, what we have to, it's our obligation to try to remove that stumbling block, which would be the missing important information. A good way to do it is to try to get the person who's selling the car, approach him and suggest that he come clean and disclose the information that needs to be disclosed. If not, then it's your responsibility, essentially, in a very private way and a non judgmental way, to encourage the potential buyer to do a little bit more research, to ask some more questions, because there may be something that he doesn't know. So this would be, do not put the stumbling block before the blind. This sometimes happens when someone has got a real estate deal and there is something wrong with the foundation in the house that they don't disclose, and you know about it because it's your neighbor. You're in the always in the should I tell or shouldn't I tell? Oh, from a Jewish perspective, you should try to facilitate that that information gets shared, ideally by the person making this, trying to sell, but if not, through you. Okay, the next on the sheet, the next one is I need a picture, please, Rabbi, of some diamonds and bracelet.
Diamonds are on their way. 1 minute.
Okay, so you have a desire to buy your wife something truly beautiful. Through a connection, you found out that you can get a diamond bracelet. You have all the particulars. The price sounds great, but you're not sure because it was described as 2 carat. You're not sure exactly what it looks like, and you'd really like to know. You basically made an agreement with someone to buy it. You have a wholesale connection that's too good to pass up, but you really want to see this before you spend the money. So you go into a jewelry store and you ask the jeweler to show you a 2 carat diamond tennis bracelet, 2 carat total weight. Is that okay? Anybody want to weigh in on that? Did anybody weigh in?
No one weighed in yet. Maybe ask the question one more time.
Okay. The question is it okay when you've already decided that you're buying from one particular merchant to go to another one and pretend to be a customer just so that you can see the merchandise?
What do you think? Is it okay to pretend to be a customer just to see the merchandise? Again, you can use the Q&A function, which is the Q&A button, and submit your answer. What do you think? Is it be a customer? BJ asked you a question, Cheryl.
Okay,
BJ asked, would a stumbling block refer to something one knows about a potential spouse prior to marriage?
absolutely. Absolutely. You know, there are many other considerations, and by no means are we in a comprehensive study of Jewish law right now. And we can certainly look at this critically at another time. But having said that, if there is information that is hurtful to someone and they are kept blind from it, then you become partly responsible for it. I think of this. For many years I was a contractor of the FBI, and they had a term that we used a lot called need to know. If you ask yourself, in my view, does this person need to know this to act properly, to have proper results? The Then it is your obligation, or you should do your best to make sure that this person finds out. The tricky part is, how do you tell them? It's really not as simple as just blurting it out. It's really with keeping the dignity of all parties in mind, with keeping the reputation of all parties in mind. It's a study in self-control, and it's a study in diplomacy, and it's a study sometime in creativity.
BJ responded that perhaps there might be disagreements on this within the Talmud. Do you know
There,
anything about that?
there are disagreements about everything in the Talmud. Correct, Rabbi?
I think you're right. The Talmud is one full document full of disagreements.
Exactly.
Thank you, BJ.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Um, you can generally find what I'm trying to give you mainstream Jewish thought, and there certainly are Talmud is discussion and Talmud is disagreements, no question. You're absolutely right. Okay, so is it okay to pretend you're a customer in a store? The answer from a Jewish perspective is no. And I'm sure that all of us have done this at one time or another, to pretend we're buying. Now, it's totally fine to go in and say, I have to tell you that I have an opportunity to get a really good deal on a 2-carat tennis bracelet, but I haven't seen it. Would you have the time to show this to me? And it's possible that the merchant thinks, I have no other customers in the store. This is a potential customer for the future, and why not? Or maybe just because he's got nothing better to do. But if this person is being taken away from viable customers or from something that could earn him money, then this is actually considered theft. What are you stealing from the merchant? You're stealing his time. That's something of value. So the answer is, don't do it without disclosure.
And just Cheryl, just so you know, BJ wrote that he agrees with you that when you go to another vendor with no intention of buying, BJ writes that I thought the Talmud considered similar to stealing.
Correct.
That is,
Yeah. There's every one of these things, and it's a question of you are right and you are right and you are right. Right now, please understand that we have limits in terms of time and in terms of resources, in terms of what we can discuss in this particular class, which is essentially an overview and just a taste. But hopefully a taste makes you hungry for more. So I encourage that kind of thing, perhaps as a follow-up or such, or on your own study. These are great ideas, absolutely true. The third one is, I need the picture of Thor, the Wonder Dog.
coming up, 1 minute.
This is Purina. That is Thor. Okay? So often you get home from work and you're starving, and you've prepared your dinner and you sit down to eat and relax, and sometimes you fall asleep before you've remembered to feed Thor. What's wrong with that picture? Well, what we learn from Torah, folks, is that you have to feed your animals first before you sit down for dinner. If you are mindful of that, then that poor puppy's never going to go to bed hungry. And chances are you won't either. Okay? Our next topic is, hey, buddy. And this is a really tough one because none of us like to be approached by panhandlers. And sometimes it happens in particular neighborhoods over and over and over again in the same day. When I was going to get my master's in Jewish studies in downtown Chicago on the south side, I parked my car probably 3 blocks from the school. And at any given evening, I was asked for money anywhere between 3 and 10 times. it's hard to find. I don't have specific sources on this. I just know that what I was taught by teachers whom I respect. Essentially, we have to remember that people are people. And if they're hungry, then it's really a non-negotiable. As much as within your means, you should not say no. What my the rabbi who guided me on this particular one said, if they say they're hungry, then you have to give. If they say they're out of gas, then it becomes a little bit discretionary, or maybe very discretionary. You don't have to worry. But even if you give, can you give to 10 people 3 nights a week? Don't think so. The Torah doesn't ask you to impoverish yourself or be unrealistic. But even when you have to say no, there's a way to do that. And this comes under kavod lebriut, to basically be respectful and honorable of a person to whom you are giving money, not give it with disdain or with disgust or toss it at them. Or even if you have to say, I'm so sorry, I can't help you, it should be with eye contact and a small smile. So respect to beggars and helping them as much as you possibly can. And a concern, whether I'm not sure, Rabbi Greenberg, if you agree with this particular thing, but that when somebody says that they're hungry, then you give extra points. If someone says they need bus fare, you have a little bit more discretion. Do you have a thought on that?
Well, it's actually a fascinating topic, Cheryl. And the Rambam Maimonides, one of the classic Jewish thinkers, writes in his Code on Jewish Law that one is obligated, and it's a very strong language, one is obligated to provide for somebody that becomes destitute. It's the level that they were accustomed to
Right.
before they were destitute,
Yeah. And that's,
which can create all sorts of interesting questions.
it's a huge discussion. It opens up, um, as our class member suggested, much more study. But I was just specifically talking about handling people who are coming up to you on the street, you know, which is sort of a contemporary reality for many of us who live in cities. Okay, I need my single malt.
Your single malt is coming. 1 second.
Okay. Um, So let's say that you feel, each of you out there, that you really enjoy life's pleasures and you like good food, you like your sex life, you like your single malt scotch. Shouldn't you feel guilty? Isn't it a sin to succumb to these baser human instincts? Well, how does Judaism feel about that? The answer is no. These things were put on earth by Hashem for us to enjoy. But there's a time and a place for everything. There's gluttony and there's asceticism. You don't have to starve yourself or deprive yourself at one end of the spectrum, and you don't have to be an animal at the other end and fulfill every single desire. But a middle ground at the right times, it's a time for you to enjoy these things. And you know the very big part of Judaism is toasting l'chaim. But all of these things, and I'm choosing right now food and liquor and sex as examples, have the potential for good or the potential for bad. And it's up to us to use them for the potential for good. I think we could add to that list also money in terms of potential excesses. But all of these things can enhance our lives. Hidur mitzvot, to make Jewish mitzvot rituals more beautiful, or they can really be used for base reasons and for hurtful reasons. So think about them as potential, and it's up to you to use them potentially for the right things. Okay, I'd like to talk to you about something that happened to me, and that is that and I don't know how many of you are out there, but I put myself on the National Bone Marrow Registry, thinking that this was a good thing to do, and also thinking there was a chance, 1 in 2 million, that I was ever going to hear from them again. And then the letter came that said I was the potential match for a bone marrow transplant for someone in Dallas, Texas. And it also said in the letter over and over again, you are under no obligation to come in for the second test. This is totally personal choice. This is up to you. And I shared this with a friend of mine, and she said, that's not a Jewish letter. It's not a Jewish letter because it is our obligation, and we can virtually say 99% of the time to do anything we can to save a life. There are a few exceptions for a different class, but in terms of a bone marrow transplant, I knew this, and she reminded me, and I'm reminding you, I had no choice as a Jew to call them right away and say, yes, I will go for the second level of testing. I did that, and by the way, unfortunately, I was not a match. But that's pikuach nefesh. It applies in so many different ways, but it's the saving of a life. Okay? Do any of you ever gossip? Do any of you like a nice, juicy story? Don't do it. Judaism puts an extreme negative, considers extremely negative, a very serious sin to speak badly of other people, even to speak of other people, even if it's true. It's basically not within us to entertain, not appropriate from a Jewish perspective to entertain ourselves by talking about other folks. I came across somebody when I was out of town. I ran into somebody who said, when you get back, please say hello to Lou, this particular individual who she hadn't seen in years. So I ran into Lou at Trader Joe's, and right away he begins to spout out a very negative story about, and an embarrassing story about the legal troubles of that particular person I had met before. That's not the Jewish way to deal. What do you do? What do you do when somebody starts talking about somebody, Lashon Hara, in front of you? This is something that takes skill. It takes diplomacy, and it takes guts. A lot of us let it happen. I'm sure that you out there are thinking, and I've been in that place. Let it happen. You're too embarrassed to criticize the person, to suggest that we get to another topic, to let them know how uncomfortable you are. It takes practice, but at the very least, you should say, and I'm getting good at it now, to say, I'm really not comfortable talking about this. Is there anything else we can talk about? Please consider nipping that in the bud, because also we become partners in the crime if we let it go on. I'm just checking the time. Does anyone want to weigh in on anything now? I'll take a little bit of a break.
Any questions? Once again, the Q&A function, which BJ has been great at using. Thank you, BJ. 2 thumbs up. Anyone else have any other comments or questions?
Okay, well, I'm going to go on. So another thing that we get uncomfortable about, and I'm just reminding you from the Jewish obligation point of view, again, I'm telling you, at the end of the day, there is not a Jewish police force that's going to come and give you trouble if you don't act the way I'm suggesting, or if you don't take these things as guides for yourself. But at the end of the day, another thing that we often have happen is that we hear about somebody who's gravely ill, unfortunately, and you know in your heart that you should call them or you should go see them. But what do you think? It's kind of the human reaction. I wouldn't know what to say. It would make me feel so uncomfortable. From a Jewish point of view, it's a mitzvah to go. Force yourself, because at the end of the day, it's not about you. Even if you're sure it's going to be too painful and too awkward, don't think. It's your obligation to go. It's not about making up a list of reasons why you shouldn't. The answer is it's your obligation to go. Yes, you should. Okay, this is one that happened to me, and I added this to the list because I'm proud that I was able to keep quiet and do the right thing. A community member at a meeting, who's now on the board, is advocating for a particular position, a result on something that I want too. But he used to be terribly obstructionist to this, but he's misstating that particular part. He is saying that he actually gets up and says that it wasn't he who was being obstructionist before, who wasn't letting this happen. And what does he do? He blames me. Not true. He tells an inaccurate story, and he suggests that I'm the one that was responsible. What did I do? Nothing. This is the principle of Shalom Bayit. At the end of the day, it didn't matter how I was feeling. It wasn't about me. It was about getting this particular thing done. And what Shalom Bayit teaches is that sometimes it's more important to have shalom in your house, to have peace in your house, to have your house whole, than to be right. And yes, BJ or whoever else is asking, thinking about it, yes, it applies to your spouse also. Sometimes it's more important to have peace than to win an argument. That's an important Jewish teaching. Okay, I'm going to do one more and then we're going to look at the text sheet. This particular one is also something I used to own a small business for 18 years, and this happened occasionally to me. You have a policy, you have a personnel policy, a payment policy whenever the checks come out. And frequently in small businesses, it's semi-monthly. At least that's how it is in Texas. So a new employee comes and says that quietly and discreetly and very humbly that he would like to speak with me. And the question is, ultimately, would it be possible to get paid that very first paycheck early? The guy just starts working for me, and I'm afraid that I'm going to set a precedent. Well, does anyone want to weigh in? Help me. What do I do with this person who's a new employee who wants his check a week before anybody else gets it or would normally be on the payment schedule? Should I do it? Would you do it? Somebody out there, just a yes or a no. Just want to know if you're there.
Would you pay the person early? That is the question.
Should you break the policy because this person is a new employee and says that he needs his check early?
What would you do? Just like the ABC show, what would you do?
Excuse me. No?
I think people are befuddled by the question.
Befuddled meaning I wasn't clear, or befuddled because it's a difficult question?
Perhaps it's because it's a difficult question.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm sure I was crystal clear, but let me go through it again. So what we're looking at here, and I'm looking at it through Jewish lenses and thinking about things that I know to believe, that I believe to be valuable Jewish teachings from Torah. And we've got a guy.
By the way, Cheryl, Ruvain Bisk responded that he would not. He would not.
Okay, I guess sometime I'd like to hear what his rationale was for that. I'm going to try to convince him that he's wrong. We're going to look at some sources in a minute, but essentially the key things in the decision, if I were to be the one to make the decision, and I have been the one in the past, I'm sure many of you out there have been the one also, is that first of all, it's hard to come to a boss and ask for money ahead of time. So there's an assumption there that he really needs it, that this is a difficult thing for him and he's forcing himself to do it because there's some desperation in this. It also is potentially a humiliating thing to be told no. The other thing is he's a new employee who most likely has been out of work for some period of time. He may really need the money. There could be some desperation in this particular thing. There's a way to do it without parading it around to everybody else, to save face for him, to show respect to him, and also to not make known that the policy has been changed just this one time, because that could be difficult. And I agree with Reuben in that particular, that might be one consideration on the negative side. But
kindly doctor tells you that it would be compassionate to do so, You have one person agrees with you there, and Lauren Davis says clearly yes. And BJ would like to know if you could do it as a loan.
Yeah, I guess so. You're gonna. That's an interesting thought. I have to. I don't think that there's anything contrary to Jewish principles in doing it as a loan. But you're paying this guy anyway. Then you have to decide how that's going to be in terms of the mechanics of this. You're just remembering you'll be getting the check a week later anyway. This is money that is due him. It's just that in Torah it says basically you pay someone the same day. In the year 2015, when you have automated payrolls and such, you can't do that. We don't pay daily. Anyway, I don't believe people get, except for the rare case of day workers. So having said that, this is money that is earned, but in our particular culture, it's paid a little bit later. But I don't think there's anything from a Jewish perspective that there's a reason you couldn't give a loan. As a practical matter, it's a little bit, a lot of paperwork for maybe a little bit of money. So anyway, that would be my suggestion and my thought for today.
And Ruvain, by the way, Cheryl, has another point for you in regards to the earlier topic around Shalom Bayit, around peace in the home. And Ruvain wrote that with a spouse, he agrees with you, but the concept of shtika kahoda'ah, which is that being silent is as if you're agreeing, meaning that sometimes you need to, it requires you to speak out when there's a real, and I'm assuming he means here a real wrong that's
Right.
happening in the community or a case of abuse. And you need to speak out to set the record straight so that you are not seen as somebody who is who knows and doesn't do anything about it, and B, so that you can help make correct an injustice.
That's very, very important, and it's very valid. I think that in my particular situation, I was suggesting we have to pick our battles, and this was one that didn't seem to be, that big of a principle. But there are absolutely cases where that would be necessary, and then it always comes to what's the Jewish way to make that happen without humiliating and being ugly to this guy in a public forum. But I would, there's so much to talk about on all of these things, and there's so many layers in this, and I'm being, because of necessity, overly simplistic perhaps, but it did get us talking. So you're absolutely right, absolutely right. Okay, if it's all right with, and I thank you for the comments, those of you who made them. I truly appreciate it because I know you're out there, and that's helpful to me. But if you would be kind enough to look, are we able to look at the source sheet a little bit? And if not, I'll read some of these to you, and then they can be.
I'll put it up for you right now.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you. All right. So these are in order, but these are things that are, in my view, and there's so many more. We could have hundreds, but it's easy to make a long list. It's much more difficult to make a short, concise list. But if a few of these become tools for you to use, it would be, you know, I would be it would make me very happy. The first one I'd like to share with you is Dan Lachapschut, judge others on the side of merit, even when appearances don't support it. So one of the things in terms of just being quick on this, I would, if we had time, I would ask you to apply it to one of the scenarios we spoke about. But I'm going to suggest that this would go with the one we just spoke about, the employee who's coming to you and asking for money in an uncomfortable time for both of you, probably. Um, Giving him the benefit of the doubt is the way we'd say this in vernacular English. But in literally the Jewish is judge others on the side of the merit. Chances are that it's not, that maybe your worst suspicion is not true, and that there's an alternative that is much more honorable. Giving people the benefit of the doubt is a huge life lesson. The second one we've talked about, the saving of a life, is the highest Jewish obligation that overrides almost every other law. Kavod habriot comes to pretty much almost anything we do in life, which is basically that we are all made in the image of God, and we're charged with the responsibility to honor human beings and encourage dignity. And even when you are giving somebody a handout of money of $1 or two, or even when you're turning them down, you can do it with a smile and with eye contact and be kind. Derech Eretz, number 4, is we must behave in a respectful, socially acceptable manner when interacting with others, including family members. Very important, very well known. Consider it, perhaps make it yours. Number 5 is Talmud Torah, Keneged Kulam. To study is great, for it leads to action. I guess that's a validation of all of us spending this hour learning together. I was looking for some quotes for the idea that it's fine to enjoy food and drink and such, and number 6 and 7 are those, and the sources are cited for you. Number 8 was about Thor, the wonder dog. It's forbidden for a person to eat before he's fed his animal, and the source is there if you wish to research it. Talking about enjoying the good things in life, in 8 things, and this is a little bit dated, especially the last one, but you can read it the way you wish. In 8 things, excess is harmful and moderation is beneficial: travel, sexual relations, wealth, work, wine, sleep, hot water for bathing, and bloodletting. Okay, number 10, tzedakah is equal to all the other commandments combined. By the way, tzedakah is often translated as charity. That's the easiest way. We don't really have the perfect word in English. It's kind of better righteousness, or to do the right thing. The difference in Judaism and tzedakah is, again, this goes under the obligation subset that we spoke about before. The word, excuse me, the word charity, it comes from the Latin caritas, like in those of you who speak Spanish, cariño, for love or affection, that be your motivation. You don't have to love to give charity. That's tzedakah, excuse me. You give tzedakah because it's the right thing to do and you're obligated. I'm going to skip because we're running out of time, but number 14 is you shall not insult the deaf or place a stumbling block before the blind. Number 13 is the one about checking out that diamond bracelet at a jeweler's. Thou shalt not steal. Number 15, you shall not abuse a needy and destitute worker. You must pay him wages on the same day before the sun sets. A little bit modified for contemporary world. Okay. Number 18, one who shames another in public has no share in the world to come. Number 19, one of my personal favorites, Shalom Bait. Sometimes having peace is better than being right. Comments? Take a minute.
Any comments on these sources? What did they bring up for you, or questions?
Okay. Well, then let me leave you with this idea. First of all, if you have any reason, if you would like to contact me directly, my email is CHERPLUS, SharePlus, not Cheryl, share, just 4 letters, shareplus@gmail.com. I also have a blog that's CherylBGordon.com, CherylBGordon.com. Again, a thank you to all of you for coming, and for Rabbi Ben Greenberg, who's the creator of Open Sinai. Thank you we had only 2 small technical glitches. It's a learning, we're learning, and thank you for sticking with us through that. I'd like to leave you with a thought from a combination of me and someone else, and just, it's basically that a Jew today has inherited over 3,000 years of Jewish thought, observation, and practical guides. It's a great advantage to have these resources and a precious gift for us to pass on to the next generation. Elie Wiesel teaches, and I love this, Judaism is not a heritage offered by the dead to the living. It is a heritage offered by the living to the living. Thank you. Shalom.
Thank you all for joining us for our third Open Sinai class, and our first one